Hi guys, it's Kate here from DIDNT and today I'm here to give you 16 reasons why there won't be a second date. You've used all your best moves and bagged date number one, and you're feeling really great about it. But then you have to show the real you for a sustained amount of time in person. You can't carefully craft each response in real life like you can on Tinder, saying, "Sorry, my boss was really onto me for a couple of hours there," followed by a witty reply, does not work after you have been staring into the middle distance for way too long at the bar you're at. So the pressure is on, and sometimes a first date doesn't quite go as planned. Usually it's pretty easy to tell if a first date was a bit of a sinking ship, whether it's the overall feeling of the date or one specific moment that the tide turned, a negative atmosphere is palpable. But then there are the times where it's much harder to tell. Afterwards, you end up pulling your hair out, analyzing the conversation, the location, the atmosphere, trying to pinpoint the moment they lost interest when you thought you had gone great. I can't tell you a specific reason why your date went wrong, but I can let you into a few of the most common reasons there won't be a second date. But before we jump into that, a little reminder, my name is Kate from DIDNT, a website that is all things dating. If that sounds even a little bit interesting to you, make sure you check it out. And if it's the date that you're looking for or wanting to get back out there, go and take Dude Hack's free quiz. This is going to tell you what dating app is best suited to you. Now, for 16 reasons your first date may have failed. Number 1, you asked an inappropriate question. This one is all about reading the room. The rule of thumb, don't ask questions that put people on the spot or that might make them not feel really comfortable on a first date. Some examples of what not to ask on a first date is exactly how much money do you earn? Why did your last relationship end? Do you always dress like that? Who did you vote for in the last election? That doesn't mean that you blanket can't talk about work, politics, or even past relationships, but if you're unsure, probably just skip that topic. 2, you brought up your ex. Just don't do it. Everyone has exes, and sure, they might come up eventually, but a first date isn't really the time or place. If it seems like you're dwelling on the past, your date will probably see this as a bit of a red flag. An exception may be a funny story that includes an ex or from an ex that was absolutely ages ago who may be a friend now, but in that case, just say that they're a friend. If they're in a story, mention them as briefly as possible. Repeatedly talking about how great a recent ex is, a definite no, and saying how awful they might be might also come across a little worse. Number 3, you were judgmental. You've just met this person, and aside from some texting, this is basically a first impression. You probably have somewhat of an idea about one another, but not a totally full or accurate idea. You definitely don't want to come across too judgmental, or all your date is going to be thinking about is whether or not you're judging them too. This means not being judgmental about anyone. You can have fun without being mean, right? I hope so. 4, you were obviously insecure on your date. I know it's easy advice to give and it can be harder to follow, but confidence is key. I'm not saying you should be the most self-assured person alive, but if you were feeling particularly insecure and looked for validation from your date instead of feeling comfortable with yourself, it might have been a little off-putting. So how are you supposed to feel secure on a first date? Well, I have some tips. Make sure you go somewhere you are comfortable. Don't like dancing? Probably don't take your date to a swing dancing class. Make sure you actually like your date. I don't mean wait until you're sure you are in love with them, because that's also a little bit of a recipe of disaster, but chat to your date on the app of choice for as long enough that you can kind of get an idea about them and at least have a decent conversation. Dress like you. A clean, tidy, good set of clothes version of you, but nonetheless you. If you dress up in what you think a date outfit is, but don't feel comfortable, it'll show. And lastly, act like you. You can think about topics to cover and questions to ask before the date, sure, but don't pretend to be someone you aren't, and don't memorize a script. No one wants to date a robot. 5, you talked too much. It's good to talk a lot on a first date, and you want your date to get to know you, but it's pretty easy to cross the line and talk way too much. This could be due to nerves or just bad social skills. Make sure you give your date a chance to talk so you can get to know them too. A good way to do this is asking questions and letting your date take the reins for a bit with their answers. Remember, everyone is on their best behavior on a first date, or they should be at least, so your date may not want to interrupt if you're going on and on and on. 6, you got a bit carried away with plans. It's nice to give your date signs that you're enjoying the time together and that you would like to see them again. But if you said too many things implying a long future together, it could have been a bit too much for a first date. Think like, you'll love my parents, or it's my favorite place to vacation, I can't wait to take you there, or the waitress has a nice name. What do you think about that for our firstborn baby girl? I mean, it's a nice sentiment, but way too much too soon. 7, you were looking for 2 different things. It's not a crime to go on a date and only looking for a hookup, nor is it to go looking for the one. But if you two weren't on the same page about what you wanted from the date, it's not a great sign for a second one. You can avoid this by communicating before actually hanging out. 8, you were rude. I hope this is an obvious thing to avoid, but hey, you never know. If you're rude to your date, it's unlikely that they would want to see you again. Sure, you can make a joke, but be careful not to cross the line and make them feel disrespected. Additionally, be nice to all the staff that you interact with. Tip your waiter and bartender, be understanding, basically be a normal, friendly human being. And if that's not the usual you, then you better go and work on yourself before you get into the dating game. So just before we move on to a few more reasons why there may not be a second date, if you are liking this video so far, we would really appreciate if you could give it a like and even hit that subscribe button for similar content. And remember, if you do want to find out what dating app is best suited to you, make sure you check out Dude Hack's dating app quiz. You'll find the link in the description box below. Now for number 9, you were culturally insensitive. Dating someone from a different culture than yours can be great, but if you made ignorant comments or asked the wrong questions about their culture or generally didn't treat the difference with enough respect, that's not a good sign that you two are going to gel well. Of course, this goes both ways. They have to respect your culture as well. This is most likely to happen if you're dating in a new place. Basically, all the usual rules apply. Don't ask intrusive questions, don't make assumptions, don't touch anyone's hair because it's different to yours and that you want to give it a feel. 10, you twisted the truth. We've all done a little bit of embellishing to make ourselves come across better on the apps, but you want to avoid lying before or on your first date, as this just sets you up for future difficulties. So no ancient photos, no exaggerations about your career, and no claims to wild riches. This goes for little embellishments on a first date too. If your date is a perceptive person, they might sense that you're not being totally honest. And if they aren't, they're gonna find out soon enough that you don't actually have an indoor pool or an indoor bowling alley in your basement. Maybe you won't take them home until day 3, but then at that point they will definitely be confused by the 2-bed apartment, roommate, and clearly rental decor. There's nothing wrong with just being who you are. As long as you're trying to be your best self, you're fine. 11, you were playing devil's advocate. A date is meant to be a pleasant experience. If you argued with your date the whole time, it's probably wasn't really that pleasant. You might think that it was a bit of fun banter to debate with them on everything that they said, but in reality, it probably wasn't. No one feels valued by a date who keeps telling them that they're wrong or asking intentionally probing questions about how they arrived at a conclusion. In fact, even if a first date isn't great, there's no reason to antagonize one another unless you're actually in the market for a new enemy rather than a new partner. 12. You didn't make an effort. You don't have to show up for every date in a tux with a fresh haircut, but make sure you're wearing clean clothes that are appropriate for the destination that you are on with your date. At an absolute bare minimum, you should have showered, have brushed your teeth, and all of the other basic hygiene stuff. If you look up showing like that you don't take care of yourself, your date probably won't be pleased. 13. You weren't focused on your date. If you were easily distracted during your date, checking your phone a lot or looking over their shoulder when they were speaking, they probably got the impression that you weren't really interested. Make sure you make your date feel like the most important thing that is going on. It's the least that you can do when you're giving them the time on a date. This also applies to pre-first date. If you know you're easily distracted, no big deal. Just be careful. Don't sit where you can see a TV behind your date. Keep your phone in your pocket, apart from when you want to check your texts in the bathroom. And definitely never absent-mindedly open Hinge while your date is getting more drinks. 14. Your senses of humor didn't match. This one is a shame, but is also really important. You can both be really funny people, but if you don't share a sense of humor, you won't feel much of a spark. Some people are just serious, and that's fine. If you're both thoughtful types, that's a humor match. But if one of you is a prankster and the other one is planning a stand-up routine on the way to the bar, you may not hit it off. 15. You picked the wrong location. Some people love to go on a first date at a fancy restaurant. Some people think it's a little bit of overkill and would much prefer a coffee or a drink at a bar. If you pick somewhere your date didn't feel comfortable, they probably didn't have the best time. How to avoid this? You need to discuss the first date and be honest and open about what you want to do and what you don't enjoy. And more than that, what you feel comfortable doing on a first date. General advice for first date activities includes having something to do, whether it's hiking or a movie. That's a really good idea on date one. A lot of people find it really awkward to go on fancy first dates. Lots of people have also told me eating a bunch on a first date is kind of weird for them, so maybe check how your date feels regarding locations. A first date should usually be in a public place if you met online to make sure that you are both feeling comfortable and safe. Check what your date's budget is. Even if you can pay for them to do something a bit more expensive, they might not feel comfortable with that. There are plenty of options for cheap first dates out. And last but not least, number 16, you made assumptions. As I keep saying, one of the most important things to do on a first date is listen. Really listen actively. If you made assumptions about your date instead of hearing what they were actually saying based on their looks, their background, education, or whatever, you're not going to be a great date. It is really hard to leave unconscious prejudice at the door, but try for the sake of romance. So now you have some ideas, the following questions will help you work out what you might have done wrong on your first date, as well as plan a great first date for the next time you get the chance to go on one. Did you listen? Did you discover your date's interests, favorites, foods, their job, their hopes, and their dreams? It's super important to listen in general, but especially on date number one. If you think back and can't remember many details about them and their life, then maybe you weren't a great listener. Next time, go with a mission in mind, like you'll find out 5 interesting things about your date, for example. Did you act like yourself? You can get into your head about a date, imagining the person you think your date wants you to be and trying to live up to that fantasy. Don't do it. the best way to make a connection and snag yourself a second date is to be yourself. Try to be comfortable in your own skin. I know, easier said than done, but you're not going to fool anyone trying to be someone that you're not, so don't bother. If you were putting on a bit of an act on your first date, the person you were with could probably sense that, and being able to tell someone is putting on a bit of an act is a bit of a turn off. Were you moving at lightning speed? For this thing to work, the two of you need to be going at the same pace, or at least similar paces. If you're feeling all in from the one moment, it could be off-putting for the date who is looking for something a little bit slower, or vice versa. If you're interested in taking things slow and one step at a time, you might get spooked if another person seems ready for commitment straight away and straight off the bat. It's good to have an idea of what you want going into a date and take the time to learn what your date wants too. If you're not in the same place, then it will never work. And lastly, are you ready for love? It's all very well and good going on a date or two, but are you actually ready to connect with someone? Is your date? If one of you has got your walls up, the relationship will go nowhere. Small obstacles become massive ones, and you'll be two ships in the night sailing past each other instead of making a connection. Communication starts with you. Ask yourself what you want and go in looking for that rather than what you think you should want. So all in all, if you don't get a second date this time around, bad luck, but don't worry about it. There are plenty more dates to be had. It's fine to reflect on what you could have done better, but don't get obsessive. It won't rewind time and give you another shot, and it certainly won't help you get a date with someone else. A failure is a chance to learn, not an excuse to give up and wallow. Next time, you'll know a few things to avoid. Get a head start by prepping yourself before your next first date and make sure you can be the best date you can be. Head over and take Dude Hacks quiz. This is going to tell you what dating app is best suited to you so you can get started. You have got this. And there we have it, guys. 16 reasons there may not be a second date. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. And if you do want to find out more information on the dating apps, make sure you check out our other videos. Oh, and hit that subscribe button for similar content. And that's all for today. Make sure you check back in for regular videos soon. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.